I'm really glad to be here today to talk to all of you about delivering across the lifespan. Next slide. So, India is a huge country. Our population is over 1.45 billion, which is 17% of the world's total population. Just like many of you have already spoken, some of the things that concern India also are we don't have mandated newborn hearing screening. There is a lack of awareness about the impact of hearing loss, again, for babies, children, and adults. Early intervention uh, is something which is being done in pockets, but a lot more needs to be done. Support across the lifespan, so which means that starting with babies and going up, including supporting teenagers at various times, is something that is required. The costs involved in the cochlear implants, the maintenance, and the upgrades are huge. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing today. Now, let us look at the status where we are. So, newborn hearing screening isn't mandated. However, some states in India have mandated newborn hearing screening. Having mandated the screening, it doesn't mean that it is happening. It's there on paper. There is some screening in some shape or form being done, but it's not being done the way it needs to be done. There are individuals who are doing the screening in pockets. There are NGOs who are doing it. There are various hospitals, etc., who are doing the screening. One of the things that we need to do for infants, teenagers, and children is we have government funded programs. So the cochlear implant program is there, and that is something that provides quite a bit of support to individuals. We have centers which provide therapy and individual professionals who provide the therapy. In terms of the adults, there is again a lack of awareness. Slowly, the awareness has just built up, and we are seeing more cochlear implants in adults. It was not there a few months ago. It has just about started. Most of these cochlear implants are self funded. Now, let us look at the services. The government has the different programs. One of them is the EDIP program, where children under 5 years can get cochlear implant. They can get a free cochlear implant. With that, they get mapping and therapy. We also have other government funded programs where there are children below 2 years who can get their implant. So there are different age criterias for providing these supports. Unlike many years ago, as a parent, when I had to self fund my child's cochlear implant, now we do have support. However, the support still lacks in therapy and in mapping because I think there is not enough awareness in that area. We also have individual programs where, can
So,
we go
Kes,
back
can
to
you
the,
go back? Yes.
yeah, thank you. We also have individual programs and centers and NGOs who are doing a lot of good work. However, there are some gaps here because many a times speech therapists feel or professionals, ENTs, are sending children to speech therapists where they don't have the skills to work with children with cochlear implants. So, as a result, what tends to happen is Children go for speech therapy every single day. Parents are sitting outside, speech therapy is being done, and they don't really progress. So, the awareness about auditory verbal therapy is something that we keep aspiring to work towards. In terms of adults, the pre and post lingual, so we have some prelingual adults who are implanted. However, after that, not much is being done with them. Postlingual implants also are done. Mapping, of course, is done, but not a lot of professionals do give therapy post cochlear implant for adults. And somewhere we find that if that is not done, the adults kind of don't progress as much. Next slide, please. So, some of the work that we do towards addressing this need is next slide, please. Uh, the newborn hearing program. So, in terms of the newborn hearing program, they are conducted at government hospitals. We're conducting it in collaboration with the Indian Academy of Pediatrics. We have just recently screened over 1,000 babies in our program, which is quite a good achievement, I would say. Um, they're also conducted from our center itself, where we do the BERA and the OAE. Next slide, please. One of the areas that we focus on is working with infants, toddlers, and their families. So we work with fitting them with hearing aids, doing therapy before, so that parents come on board and they understand how to work with their child once the cochlear implant is done. Parents are guided and coached, like Paige said, through the AV auditory verbal therapy system. They are taught to develop listening and spoken language. I think one of the main areas that we focus on initially is ensuring that they get the functional language, then work with daily routines, songs, rhymes, stories, book sharing. We use a lot of craft. We use a lot of language related to festivals. India is a very rich country and it has festivals all the time. So we take that opportunity to give them language around it. We develop self advocacy and early literacy skills with our children. Earlier, this was not done, but now what we are seeing is once children are implanted, they are going off into mainstream schools. But somewhere the literacy skills were missed. So that is something that we have started focusing on. Guidance and preparation towards mainstreaming is given to every family. We need to make sure that the child develops functional skills before they are put into mainstream schools. Sometimes parents get the wrong message saying, get your child implanted and then the child will go into mainstream school. But if we don't have the requisite language for them to function in the mainstream, then they kind of start falling back. Next slide, please. We also work with some later implanted children and their families. We support them. We create an awareness about speech therapy versus developing listening and spoken language, because many of them, like that we work with through our remote program, are in remote areas of the country and they don't know the difference. They've been told go for speech therapy and they feel that that's what is going to get their children the right outcomes. We also create awareness about what are good outcomes, what are some of the things that we need to aspire for with each of our children and families. Guidance and counseling with late implanted children is about looking at realistic outcomes, making them understand that it's not magic, it's not going to happen really soon. It is going to be a long haul, and they need to be committed to the therapy to make sure that they are with us for anything to really come to fruition. We also sometimes help them with a bridge program. If we find that some of the children are not able to get into the mainstream right away, we can't let them sit at home. So we do have some special schools here who focus on teaching in the auditory uh, method. So we ask them to go in there, develop their listening and language, and once that gap is bridged, we put them into mainstream schools. Next slide, please. One of the challenges that we have in India is it's a huge country with different states and over 29 languages and different dialects. So families sometimes don't know what language. Every family aspires for their child to learn English. However, we need to make sure that we educate them that we need to start with the language of the home. Once they have got their base language, English will happen. So that's a challenge we're constantly facing and constantly educating our families. Um, Sometimes what happens is that if they have just been put into an English medium school where the parents don't understand English, then these children learn through rote for a couple of years and then fall back. And then parents come back after many years saying, my child is not progressing in school, or the school wants to throw my child out. So, what do I do? So, that's where now we have started focusing on working with the development of comprehension and literacy skills. We're working with a partner organization where we're trying to bridge this gap to make sure every child who has this problem, we can bridge this gap and take them forward. Next slide, please. Building higher language skills in teenagers. So we've also found that after a point when some of our children reach the teenage stage, there are some gaps because there are some gaps in their social emotional language, in their cognitive skills, sometimes due to lack of higher language skills, they miss out on certain aspects of maths, grammar, and science. So, what we do is we work with some of these children one on one. We're also in the process of getting a group together where we will do some skill building and higher language skills in a group, um, and to set up an assisted learning program for these children. Next slide, please. So, working with adults, actually, I have started working with adults since about a year, and I just love working with them because um, I think there was a huge lack of awareness for adults. So, what we are doing is regularly we have camps, hearing screening camps. We have hearing screening camps for babies, but similarly, we've started doing hearing screening camps for adults. We just screen their hearing, tell them where they are. If they require a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, we guide them towards that. Otherwise, we tell them to come back after 6 months or a year, depending on their hearing loss. Regular audiological assessments are done. We help them in case they require a cochlear implant. We help them to meet other families. Through this, they can ask their questions. They and they have a lot of questions. Adults uh, do worry whether, do they really need a cochlear implant or not? Just now, I'm working with a bunch of adults, and it's quite challenging and quite different because each of them, there is a 21-year-old that I'm working with, there is a 36-year-old who's a unilateral adult. There's an 80-year-old, there's a 62-year-old. Each one has a different journey. And their learning style, their capacity of learning, and even their neural plasticity is very different. Again, it all depends on what the family support here is. So, if there is good family support for an individual, the journey is much quicker.